So let me get this out of the way. I do not think Yasuke should be a playable character in Assassin's Creed Shadows. But I also think it's not that big of a deal. Some people are crying about how Ubisoft, by having an actual historical figure as a playable character, has flouted all the conventions of the series and overturned 15 years of precedent. Fuck you, it's not that deep. Just because they've never had an actual historical figure as a playable character before doesn't mean they never can. Some people say he was never a samurai. Other people say he was. Some say he was a pet. This guy says he was given a house, a sword, and a stipend. That makes him a samurai.
As for him being a samurai, he, without a doubt, was. We know he was a retainer. In 16th century feudal Japan, retainers that were in a militaristic or security role were samurai. Being that Yasuke was the bodyguard of Nobunaga, as written by Louis Freud, this places him as a part of the Bushi. You may recognize this word as being the root word for Bushido, or the way of the warrior, a code of ethics followed by samurai. And Nobunaga gifted Yasuke a katana, which in that time period was highly significant, as it conferred not just the right to bear arms, but also signified a form of social elevation within samurai hierarchy.
This guy says he was given all those things, but we still don't know if he was a samurai.
This black man called Yasuke was given a stipend, a private residence, etc., and was given a short sword with a decorated sheath. He's sometimes seen in the role of weapon bearer. The only real answer we can present is the fact that we don't know. We cannot say for certain that Yasuke was a samurai, but we also cannot just dismiss it with the same level of certainty and say, no, he absolutely wasn't. As you see, he was given a stipend. As you see, he was given land. Therefore, it is possible that he was also given the title of samurai, but we don't know for sure, and it cannot be stated as a fact. So, after all of this, was Yasuke samurai? We don't know.
And I still don't know how I feel about this guy. More on that later. Some people appeal to historical accuracy to say he wasn't a samurai, therefore we shouldn't be playing as him. Because the Assassin's Creed games have always been about historical accuracy. Presumably, none of these people had any problem with the fact that the second game ends in a fistfight with the Pope, because I didn't see anyone complaining about that online. Characters do actual magic in these games. And I'm not talking about the Arthur C. Clarke advanced technology feels like magic stuff. No, these games abandoned that pretext a long time ago. This is just magic. Or did you really think that it would ever be technologically possible for someone alive in current year to have a conversation with someone who lived tens of thousands of years ago using a guy from hundreds of years ago as a telephone?
The rest is up to you, Desmond.
What?
I'm not a historian. I'll never be in a position to adjudicate the question of whether or not Yasuke was an actual samurai. Also, I don't care. The Assassin's Creed games have always taken actual historical events and people and remixed them to support the overarching Assassin v Templar narrative. If they want to interpret Yasuke as a samurai in their fictionalized version of Japan, they have the creative license to do so. So why don't I think Yasuke should be a playable character? A long time ago, when Assassin's Creed 1 came out, I remember someone making a joke about it being a stealth game, saying, "Oh sure, all stealth games end with 2 hours of just fighting guys out in the open." I understand that joke, but at the same time, I like the fact that Altair could handle himself when shit goes down. I like the idea of stealth, but I don't like games that focus on stealth to the point where the character's a weakling who folds the moment he gets spotted, or the gameplay is so geared around stealth that it's nearly impossible to take on multiple opponents in a fight or a shootout. I also don't like the idea of having a split mission structure, each character having their own fighting style, because you always end up liking one more than the other. And then, when playing as the one you don't like, it feels like you're trapped or it feels restrictive. Best to have one central character that can do everything you need them to be able to do. Also, playing as a ninja in an Assassin's Creed game is everything every AC fan has ever wanted. Yasuke could have been a prominently featured side character who pops up to give aid and advice to the main character Naoe. Though some people think even that would be too much. There's a kind of spectrum of racism out there in the world, a racism spectrum, where some people will claim that black people never did anything, and other people will claim that black people actually did everything. Myths about racial inferiority and superiority, skull shape, phrenology, melanin theory, and other nonsense. This spectrum is in many ways a timeline, because this shit over here probably wouldn't exist if this bullshit over here never existed in the first place. A while ago on YouTube, I saw a video with Sir David Attenborough saying that Africa, during the medieval period, had kingdoms that were every bit as developed as the kingdoms of Europe, with culture, currency, written language and poetry, schools and universities, artistry and craftsmanship. And I have no reason to doubt this is true. In fact, I believe it's most likely true, but they don't teach African history in American schools. There are those who say, but not for the white man, Africans, all Africans over the entire continent, would still be titties out, bone in nose, loincloths, throwing spears at lions, living in straw huts. A lot of racist tropes about black people, many of which you still hear to this day, were just invented to justify slavery. The idea that black people, or the Negro as they would say, is childlike in his mentality and can't really take care of himself. So slavery gives them something to do. Idle hands are the devil's playground, that type of nonsense. People still believe this bullshit, which leads them to post stuff like this on Twitter when AC Shadows was announced. On the other hand, you have these Hotep types inadvertently promoting white supremacy by claiming that Europeans could just roll up to Africa and start snatching people. Conspiracy Brother says,
before the white man came to Africa, the black man didn't know war or poverty or disease. They was all there together, living in peace and harmony, singing each other's songs, doing each other's dances, cooking each other jollof rice.
Do not be persecuted by the pompous fedora balanced by the equilibrium fortified by the government's inability to eradicate or foreshadow, taken from the Hebrew word foreskin.
How can people pull up to a land they don't know the terrain, they don't know the climate, they don't know what animals to hunt or what fruits and berries to pick, and they just start winning wars against people that have been there for generations? No, the transatlantic slave trade was, at least at first, helped by the natives. Or at least some of the natives, and possibly under duress. Anyway, this isn't a history video, so let's move on. The unfortunate thing about the "we was kings" phrase is that there are people out there who can be insulted in this way. The slave trade ripped people away from their roots, and so some people have invented mythology to claim as their roots. And they'll claim any and every prominent figure and civilization from history as their own. No doubt black people have done more throughout history than they're given credit for, but they can't possibly have done everything, in the way that these Hotep types will claim. For some of these people, the willingness to believe this stuff is probably born out of a genuine desire for roots and culture. And then you have hundreds of years of black people being told that they're less than and inferior. So of course, some people are going to gravitate towards a belief system that contradicts that nonsense. But there are bad actors who take things too far and spoil it for everyone. That being said, 99.9% of the time you see someone saying, "We was kings and shit," this person is just being racist. Anyway, watch this clip of Mixedish.
This is how we ate in our natural state when we were kings and queens in Africa.
I hate to break it to you, but we weren't all kings and queens in Africa. That's not even how a monarchy works. But the truth is, most of us were just regular people eating regular food.
So this is true, right? The vast majority of black people throughout history were just regular people. But this is also true of white people. They don't say, "we was kings," but I see plenty of white people online all the time trying to jerk off their history. "We built the Roman aqueducts. We painted the Sistine Chapel. We did this. We did that." It's all bullshit. What you have is a few prominent people in history doing great things, or at the very least, directing the doing of great things. A great architect might design a structure, and then slaves get whipped until it's built. You want to be proud of your history, that's fine. But you can't claim that the skills and talents of a few people from that history are intrinsic to every descendant from that history. I realize at this point that I might actually get called racist by some of the people watching this. Maybe black people, maybe white people, maybe both, maybe neither, who knows. But I feel it necessary to clarify something. I'm half black, half white. My mother's white, my father's black. I was born in England, I grew up in New Jersey, and now I live in England again. I'm not racist against any particular group. I don't like people, okay? I don't like any of you motherfuckers. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Some people are claiming that Ubisoft and the game itself are racist for two reasons. One, it features rap music in the trailer.
You put a black guy in your game, you gotta use rap music, huh?
Japanese people have always loved rap music. Look at these Wu-Tang fans. Also, Samurai Champloo. The second reason the game is racist is that it features a black man killing Asian men. It's a black man killing Asian men simulator. Okay? You set a sword fighting game in Japan, who else you gonna kill? Is it sexist if I play the game as Naoe going around killing men? Was it racist against white people when it was Adewale killing slavers? Or what about Ezio killing whatever the fuck these people are? Is this Marvel being racist by having Ronin kill Yakuza? Oh, but hate crimes, don't you know? There's been a rise in hate crimes against Asian people since the beginning of the illness I can't mention or I'll get demonetized. Most of which have been done by black people. Except, this is a myth. Hate crimes against Asians have risen, but the percentage of these hate crimes done by any particular race has stayed the same. Some people are saying this game's gonna be some kind of weird combination of the white savior and magical Negro trope. A magical savior Negro. This is unknowable at this point, right? The game isn't out yet. I'll tell you what, if at any point in the game, Yasuke's like, "Our ways are wrong. We need to change to keep up with modernity. And by we, I mean you. Let me help. Follow me, my friends, to a new future. Then maybe you'll have a point. Also, no, Ubisoft is not making Yasuke gay. All they're doing is continuing the optional relationships from the previous games. In Odyssey and Valhalla, you could play as a male or female version of the character, and from time to time, an NPC would proposition you.
Oh, Misthios, you're back! And not a moment too soon.
I got what you asked for.
Who is this Avxesia?
This is the Misthios who's going to reignite our spark, my love.
God save me. I cannot do this anymore.
Your husband is tired.
Allow me to satisfy your hunger.
I've never been with a mercenary before. Very well. Let's see what you're made of.
The player has the option to accept or reject the offer. So, Yasuke, and probably Naue as well, will be as gay or straight as the player wants them to be. Listen to this clip.
Political pandering that they're doing, because they are pushing politics. All of this thing about, oh no, we're just doing it because we really think that historical character Yasuke is an interesting historical character. If that were the case, then we would not have a problem. 95% of the people who are having a problem with this wouldn't have a problem. Do you know how I know that? I know that because the African samurai has been featured all over the place in anime and previous video games, and no one bat an eye. But for some reasons, these people are now complaining about Yasuke in this game. Why? Because we know that there is a massive difference. There is a difference between how video games are pushing politics now and how they weren't and were just an artistic expression then. And that's a fact. And in this specific case, we know that's what's happening. Also because the Twitter or X accounts of some of the people involved with this and the whole Sweet Baby Inc. company that is clearly politically motivated, and we can see that the people behind these choices are highly politically motivated. And whether you agree with the politics or not, let's not pretend that they're not doing it for politics. They're absolutely doing it for politics. And that is why people are mad. Exception being a very few percentage of people who are actually racists.
So Ubisoft is putting Yasuke in this game not for legitimate reasons, but for shameless DEI pandering reasons. And we can know that because of conspiracy theories on Elon's Twitter, aka Stormfront 2.0. And we can know the people complaining about Yasuke being in the game are not just being racist, because 95% of them wouldn't be complaining if Ubisoft had put him in the game for legitimate reasons that weren't motivated by shameless DEI pandering. And we can know that because of the reaction to his presence in other video games and media. This is an interesting claim because, first off, he's mind reading here, right? He's mind reading Ubisoft, and he's mind reading the fans who reacted negatively. He can't actually know the motivations of either group. Second, we don't have an alternate timeline to run these kinds of experiments in to know how people would react in different situations. How would people have reacted to his presence in the game if it was not, as people claim, DEI motivated? What would the game even look like if his presence in it was legitimate and not DEI motivated? Would he even be in the game? How would people have reacted to the game if Yasuke was just a side character, or wasn't in it at all? All of the answers to these questions are unknowable, but what we can do is look back on reactions to Yasuke and other black characters in games and media. I'll start with my go-to anecdotal example. I talked a bit about this in my She-Hulk video. I had a comment exchange with someone on YouTube under a trailer for Uncharted Lost Legacy who was complaining about forced diversity. Fortunately or unfortunately, his channel has since been deleted, so I can't show you his exact comments. He brought up Watch Dogs 2 as an example of forced diversity. Apparently for him, it just wasn't believable that a black man who lives in San Francisco would wear hipster clothing, even if everyone he knows and all of his friends wear hipster clothing, or that a black man could be smart enough to be a hacker. I asked him for an example of a black person in a video game that wouldn't be forced diversity. His exact words were, Franklin from GTA 5, a nigga gangbanger. Specifically about Yasuke, he has appeared in other games and media, but I've been unable to find anything he's been in, at least in the West, as big as an Assassin's Creed game. Whatever reaction there was to him in this other media, positive or negative, may have been much more muted than the reaction to him here because of the sheer size of the success and notoriety of the Assassin's Creed franchise. What I'm saying is, it might be unfair to compare the reaction to his presence as a playable main character in a franchise as big as AC to him appearing as a side character or NPC or one of many playable characters in some smaller franchise. There have also been other games set in Japan that feature non-Japanese characters that nobody complained about. But that doesn't count apparently, because those games were made by Japanese developers. This sounds like some kind of non sequitur to me, but okay. Some brave soldier of the culture war put together something called the Woke Content Detector's curated list of games. This list was put together by someone who doesn't want to accept the fact that other kinds of people exist and want to see themselves represented in media. There has long been a problem in media of underrepresentation and misrepresentation of people of color and women in entertainment. If you go back far enough, you'll find white people playing characters of color while wearing various kinds of bad makeup and prosthetics. And fairly recently, you've had the whitewashing of POC in movies about real people. This desire that people of color have for representation in media is not, as some would say, because these other kinds of people are unable to relate to, say, non-people of color characters. People of color have long learned how to do that after decades of not having any other choice. Maybe if you've always seen people that look like you represented on screen, you have no idea what it feels like to rarely see yourself depicted in media, and when you are depicted, to be portrayed mostly as whores or criminals.
Silky, funky, smoke cigarette in a pushy. She give you everything you want. Long time.
I want revenge.
Yeah, Bobby. Bobby, I need a little more black. You know what I'm saying? Like, stick your ass out, bug the eyes. You know how they move, you know?
Yeah, jive ass.
I loved it, my brother.
What is wokeness anyway? What does it mean to be woke? To be woke is to be awake, to be aware of social injustice, to know that racism, sexism, and all the other various isms and phobias exist and are a problem. That bigotry and discrimination are oppressive, are a barrier to people when trying to achieve success and happiness. According to this definition, anyone who claims to be anti-woke is pro these things. But that's not what you mean, right? That's not what you're saying. You just think woke stories are bad. But if wokeness is a good thing, which it is, then how can a woke story be bad? I guess what you're trying to say, the Steelman version, is that some writers are bad. And while a good writer might be able to write the morals and messages into their stories in ways that work, bad writers are too heavy-handed or ham-fisted in the way that they insert the woke messaging, and it comes off as artificial or contrived. Now this itself is true, okay? Some writers are bad. And we've all seen movies and TV shows where preachy dialogue makes you cringe, or characters will bring up politics out of nowhere to make some kind of point about whatever the writer's pet issue is, or there's a kind of pandering to marginalized groups by having pseudo-representation.
I'm the one who called you earlier about your husband.
Is Brady okay?
Ken Haberfield. I just got off the phone with his boyfriend.
My husband had nothing to do with this.
I mean, this stuff does happen, but the problem is, I don't fucking believe you when you say that this is your problem, because I see what you identify as woke and I know how you identify it. You see, I'm more than willing to admit that a story can be bad and woke, and bad because of the wokeness. There are some activist-minded people who are always on the mic, and everything they see in the world is filtered through this activist prism. Everything, every possible thing, is a function of some oppressive system. Then there are people who are beyond woke, let's say, like the horseshoe theory. These people call themselves woke, but they're not really. They just use wokeness to cover their own bigotry against white people. But the anti-woke crowd are completely unwilling to admit that woke things can be good. Woke equals bad to them, and they'll determine a thing to be woke from a teaser trailer or a cast list or character concept art. In other words, long before they could possibly know how the story plays itself out. If there's black people in it, if it stars a woman, if there's gay people in it, with no justification of their presence or why they're gay, then it's woke and therefore bad, regardless of the subject matter. There's an upcoming game called South of Midnight being developed by Compulsion Games. Compulsion Games has been the subject of some controversy. First, they hired a woman named Katie Robinson as their community manager, and this was probably a bad idea. She does have some controversial tweets. She really does, though. I mean, I don't know the exact context in which this was written. I hate gamers too sometimes. But this tweet here, I think there's enough here that this person should not have been hired. She does seem like she might be one of those people I was talking about when I said that some people are always on the mic. Second, they hired consultancy firm Sweet Baby Inc. to help with the game. You know, I Google, I Bing, I DuckDuckGo, I still don't know what Sweet Baby Inc. does. I'm sure if I go on their website, I'll find a mission statement, but that won't be unbiased. But then, on the other end, all I can find is hate posts on Twitter, hate posts on Reddit, hate videos on YouTube, and hate articles on whatever. And a lot of these things link back to the same person. They all cite the same few sources, mainly a guy named Mark Kern. I can't find anything concrete. Maybe what I want is too specific. I want to know exactly what Sweet Baby Inc.'s contribution was to any of the games that they worked on. Like, for example, are they in any way responsible for the Deaf Girl sequence in Spider-Man 2? Because if they are, then fuck them forever. We don't need this in a Spider-Man game. I want to fight bad guys. I want to swing on a web, right? It's bad enough they got me riding a bike. And this is coming from someone who didn't even mind the MJ sequences and the Miles sequence in the first Spider-Man game. I wouldn't have missed them if they were gone, but this is bullshit. We don't need this. And MJ being a Krav Maga expert all of a sudden, 6 months of training, she can single-handedly take down seasoned, trained mercenaries and 20 symbiotes. Whatever. I think at this point we cut our losses and Sweet Baby Ink can go. They might be more trouble than they're worth, given their bad reputation. But then again, they might not really be doing anything wrong. All the people complaining about them seem to be the worst kinds of people. So, anyway, back to South of Midnight. Mark Kern, who goes by Grums on Twitter, is one of the loudest people crying heavy tears online about the presence of woke characters in games. He posted this about South of Midnight. He claims to have spoken with former devs on the game and that they told him all about how Sweet Baby Inc. and DEI initiatives ruined it. He claims that Hazel, the main character, looked like this before she was race swapped by wokeness. And maybe this is true. Maybe she was race swapped by woketards for DEI pandering reasons. Maybe he did get this picture from a former dev on the game. I suppose there's a non-zero chance of this being true, but when I Google search this image, all the links point back to Kern, which is common when I search for this type of stuff. He seems to be the main source of this anti-woke gaming bullshit. For example, thatparkplace.com has 4 articles about Compulsion games, all written by the same guy, 3 of which cite Mark Kern as their primary or only source. All these YouTube videos, all these Reddit posts and articles, they're all just Mark Kern copy pasta. Anyway, I have no way to verify where he got this picture from. It seems to me very likely that he pulled it from his own asshole. Even if he didn't though, even if she was originally white, nothing I've seen indicates that she was race swapped for illegitimate reasons. Let me explain. There's a making of documentary for the game. I'll link it in the description. From the documentary, it seems that this guy here created the original concept for the game, but when the time came to flesh out the story, he connected with this lady, who's a storyteller and scholar of Black Southern folklore. In the documentary, all the concept art shown features a black main character. It could be that she was race swapped, if she was race swapped at all, very early on in the process. Watch this video about the development of Kratos from God of War, or Google concept art from your favorite characters. Character designs are constantly changing all throughout a game's development process. It's a commonplace thing. No reason to think that didn't happen here. What I mean is, even if Hazel was white when she first appeared in this man's imagination, so what? Through talking to this lady, visiting the locale, and developing the story, the decision to change her race could just be something that naturally occurred to the developers and they thought it was a good idea, especially given how steeped the game's story is in Black Southern folklore. This twatter claims not to know what that means, which is bullshit. It's not that hard a code to crack. Black Southern folklore is folklore created by black people in the South. Of course, he already knew that. He's just being a racist troll. Anyway, this Mark Kern person doesn't seem all that trustworthy to me. There are plenty of videos and articles online about exactly what kind of asshole he is, but here's the short version. The sliver of credibility he uses to legitimize his claims of behind-the-scenes knowledge and connections in the video game industry is that he was a dev on World of Warcraft. But that was 20 years ago. He left Blizzard in 2005. Since then, he hasn't done much of anything. He co-founded and was CEO of a company called Red 5. He was then fired from that company for being an all-around terrible boss, as is described in this article, and the game they worked on failed miserably upon release. He then failed at developing an MMO and is now allegedly working on a game called Ember, which is either a genuine attempt at making a real game or just a means of scamming people through crowdfunding. There are conflicting reports on that. Either way, I believe Mark Kern is just a racist, and racist people tend to be miserable and very unpleasant to be around, which lines up with descriptions of his behavior from the people who worked with him at Red 5. Miserable people tend not to be able to make and maintain friendships, and because of this, I find it difficult to believe that after 20 years of not doing anything relevant in the video game industry, this guy still has all these industry connections to tell him any of the bullshit he posts on Twitter. Most of it he probably just makes up. When you see people of color in games set in time periods where those people of color wouldn't have existed in those regions, some people will often credit this to some kind of nefarious motivation. It's either another play in the white genocide playbook, or it's a blatant attempt at appealing to woketards online. Now, it's obviously not the first one because that's just mythology. But maybe the second one's true. Maybe it is just cynical pandering. But it could also just be an overcorrection based on a genuine desire to address a real grievance. The grievance of under and misrepresentation. Who's to say how many black people there were in this historical place at that historical time anyway? I'm not a historian, but neither are most of the people online complaining about Yasuke. Some people seem to want to believe that the first time black people and white people ever interacted with each other was at the beginning of the transatlantic slave trade. A quick Google search gave me a list of several African kingdoms that had been trading with Europeans for thousands of years. Some people will say,
why not put black characters in their own games?
And I'm sure many of these people are sincere. But many of the people who ask this question have ulterior motives. I'd be happy to see Ubisoft make an Assassin's Creed game set in any of these African kingdoms. But I am 100% certain that if they did, assholes online would still complain about it and call it We Was Kang's bullshit. How do I know this? Because that's exactly what happened with AC Origins set in Egypt. People got real racist about it and called it AC We Was Kang's Edition. If I didn't make myself clear enough earlier, I'll say it again here. The phrase We Was Kang's, though it may be of dubious origin, was allegedly originally intended to lampoon only those few black people who would make grandiose claims about history. Like this guy who thinks that Beethoven's magical Moorish melanin helped him write better songs while deaf than when he could hear.
Who's Beethoven? Beethoven was Tovin Bey. He was a Moor. His mother was a Moor. Yes. And when he went deaf, that melanin kicked in. The inner eye kicked in. He heard music better when he was deaf than he heard it otherwise.
But the vast majority of the time I see the phrase, it's being used against any claim made by any black person, regardless of the veracity of the claim. You might be wondering what you're looking at here. Someone took the AC Origins reveal trailer, added some cartoonish voiceover, and all the comments are just pure racism. This video is from the live chat from the premiere of the reveal trailer. It's all just pure We Was Kang's bullshit. These things tend to fall down the internet memory hole. During this whole Yasuke announcement scandal, I saw somebody on Twitter post a list of black characters from games saying,
we're not being racist. Look at all these other black characters that none of us had any problem with.
And on that list were several characters I've heard or seen people talk shit about. I should have screen capped it, but oh well. I remember Miles Morales was on the list. When Spider-Man 2 came out, there was a whole internet campaign about how Peter Parker is Spider-Man, but Miles Morales is Miles Morales, which I found to be very suspect. On the woke content list, Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales is not recommended. What's the problem with this game set in modern-day Manhattan? The new POC main character overshadows Peter Parker. He's the main character of a spin-off. There's not much Peter Parker in the game for the same reason there's not much Balky Bartakamus or Cousin Larry in Family Matters. What's the problem with Starfield, set hundreds of years in the future? All populated areas are equally diverse. Many important people are POC. This has been edited since I first recorded this audio, maybe due to backlash, who knows, but the original text can be found on rpg.org. Right here it says, contains overtly pro-LGBTQ+, blah, 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 all populated areas equally diverse, many important people are POC. What's the problem with Forspoken, starring a black woman, set partially in modern-day New York City? Almost all prominent characters interacted with in NYC are POC. The same diversity seen in NYC is also seen in Athia. Trine 5: A Clockwork Conspiracy features many POC NPCs despite there being none in previous games. Maybe they're correcting the mistake of not having any POC in previous games. The ability of Leatherface, or the Cannibal, to wear the faces of POC survivors is not, in and of itself, blackface. But the developers decided to remove this feature because some players were using this ability to racially harass other players online. So, fuck you.
Why don't black people get together and make their own shit?
Okay. Voice of Bayek, Abu Bakr Salim, formed his own video game company and released Tales of Kenzera Zao. What happened? A torrent of racist trolling. You can't even put a black person in the Minecraft movie as one of the 4 main leads without people moaning. The Boys obviously isn't a video game, but this is relevant. Look at the reaction to Sister Sage in a show set in modern-day New York. Look at these comments from the first couple of hours after IGN posted this on Facebook. Let's just let this ride for a little bit. I guess this is that 5% that Metatron was talking about. A quick tangent and spoiler warning for those who haven't seen Season 4 yet, come back at this timestamp. It's become a regular feature on this channel to point out when people fail to understand the media they consume. At some point, A-Train is revealed to be a traitor to the Seven. Sage claims she knew this all along and was feeding him misinformation to give the boys. Homelander fires her for not telling him. There were gleeful morons online saying, I guess she's not that smart after all. Maybe she thought A-Train would be more useful this way, and if Homelander knew that A-Train was cooperating, he would have killed A-Train immediately. Why would she think that? Maybe because of how quickly he killed this girl before they could get any information out of her.
You just tell us the truth, we swear you'll be fine, right? I swear on the life of myself. What? She confessed, leak plugged.
You don't think the next word out of her mouth might have been useful?
Guess I am that petty.
Anyway, welcome back to those who skipped. Here's a couple of guys reacting to the Fallout TV show trailer, which is based on a video game and set in the future of America. A place, by the way, that currently has black people. But apparently, for this guy, it's just not believable that black people will make it to the future. Every time a non-white person appears on screen, he goes, diversity, diversity.
Holy fuck, the diversity.
Join the Brotherhood.
Oh my god, diversity.
And then a man comically screams like a woman.
Was that a dude screaming like that? Go back to that. So. This guy's getting killed. Holy fuck, dude, that was so bad.
And that's just too much for him. He's done now.
No thanks. I'm done. I'm out.
I wonder why. I wonder why he's done.
No thanks. No thanks.
While I was editing this, trailers were released for Naughty Dog's next game, Intergalactic, and for the next Witcher game. And the usual assholes did their thing. Now, I've never read any of the Witcher books, and I've only played a few dozen hours of the most overrated game of all time, Witcher 3, but from what I understand of the games and from what people who've read the books say about their stories, it's perfectly fine for Ciri to be the protagonist of a Witcher game. She was featured prominently in Witcher 3 and was also playable at times, so it's not completely out of the blue for her to be the player character in Witcher 4. Also, Geralt's retired now? I'll let this guy explain.
Now, Geralt has been the main character for every Witcher game to date, and this will be the first one without him. Now, for Witcher fans like myself, this should be no shock at all. Witcher 3's Blood and Wine expansion seemed like the perfect send-off for this character, living a retired life out in the countryside of Beauclair, and even talking to the player breaking the fourth wall to address us directly, stating it was time for a well-earned break.
According to the book readers, the story's just as much about Ciri as Geralt anyway. It's a reasonable transition. To reasonable people anyway. Then you've got this bullshit. Intergalactic is disgusting, woke, Naughty Dog shit. Stunning and brave. The stalest of memes. Imagine being so scared of your own fans that you turn off the comments. Of course they turned off the comments. They're not scared of their own fans. They knew c***s like you would shit on them for no real reason. And when I say no real reason, I mean no legitimate reason. You've got no legitimate reason to be doing this, to be dislike bombing the trailer. Who wanted this shit? This is something else I keep hearing anti-woke people say, as though they think it makes them sound witty or smart or something. Who wanted this? The answer is, not you, okay? You only speak for yourself. And what's cringe about the trailer? It's a 4-minute trailer where basically nothing happens. How is that cringe? If it was the exact same trailer, same gestures and mannerisms, same animations, the exact same dialogue, but it was a dude that looked like Nathan Drake, you wouldn't be saying shit about this trailer. The only cringe thing in this trailer is a Pet Shop Boys song. Remember earlier when I said this? This desire that people of color have for representation in media is not, as some would say, because these other kinds of people are unable to relate to, say, non-people of color characters. People of color have long learned how to do that after decades of not having any other choice. Let me expand. Some people who are anti-diversity and anti-representation say, why do you need a character to look like you in order to be able to relate to them? You can't relate to a white character? That's pathetic. This isn't the problem and never has been. Every year, hundreds of movies and TV shows come out, and for decades, the vast majority of them have starred white people. People of color have gotten used to this and gladly watch these shows. There has been a push for more diverse representation in entertainment lately, and when I say diverse representation, I don't just mean in number, I also mean in the nature of those depictions. There are places in America, and England too, I guess, where white people grow up and don't meet black people until basically adulthood.
I was 14 and the Jimi Hendrix Experience had come to my hometown of Newcastle. He was the first black guy I ever saw in person.
Entertainment is such an integral part of our lives in the West, especially in America, that people form opinions on very important aspects of their lives based on what they see on screens. If the only place these people ever see a black person is on television, then the image of black people that they form in their minds will be shaped by those depictions. And while negative portrayals of black people in entertainment can be damaging to the psyche of black people, if all a non-black person knows of black people is the thug shit and gangster shit they see on television, then that's all they will think of black people. This is why representation is important. But what does any of this have to do with Intergalactic? Well, some people, stupid people, are upset about the mere fact that it stars a mixed-race bald woman. And that's it. They can't possibly be upset about anything else because, besides the fact that it's set in space and features bad music, we can't possibly know much of anything else about the game from that teaser trailer. We can't know where the story's going. We can't know much about the character's personality. We can't know anything about the style of the gameplay from this trailer, which, by the way, is the most important thing about a video game. It is a Neil Druckmann game, so there'll probably be some good gameplay moments spread across about 10 to 15 hours of mostly walking around doing nothing. But what if it did have good gameplay? You'd never know because this collection of polygons isn't fuckable enough for you. When it comes to fucking actual women in real life, I'm not a fan of the half-head shaven, blue-haired, face-pierced, angry feminist look. I'm very much about the big-titty hourglass type. But as much as I like the trad wife anchor woman aesthetic, such a thing has never factored into my enjoyment of a video game. Sean has a good point on this though. I made a joke a couple of videos ago about how it doesn't matter how fuckable video game characters are, I can't play games one-handed anyway. But this isn't really about sex. Anti-woke people think that they're the ones who should rightfully be in control of pop culture or the zeitgeist or whatever, because that's how things have always been. And they think that other kinds of people gaining privilege is somehow a loss of their own rights. The right to be first in line, I guess. They can't seem to fathom a world where their particular demographic is but one of many catered to fairly and evenly. Their mindset seems to be, if you're getting something, it's because I'm not. And all the yelling about these ugly characters and these overtly sexual mods are just a very performative attempt to put us in our place. I would never say puzzle games shouldn't exist because I don't play them. But these people have main character syndrome, and they say stupid things like this. By making this character, the devs have gone out of their way to piss off the people they want to sell it to. 3 things. Number 1, maybe they don't want to sell it to you. Maybe it's not for you. Such things are allowed to exist. Number 2, I would think going out of one's way would require more effort. Do you really think modeling this character took more effort than this one? Number 3, why would a game merely having a black and or female character piss anyone off? You reveal more about yourself than you realize. This statement says more about you than it does about the devs. You people just have an irrational hatred for Neil Druckmann and Naughty Dog because they dared to make a game with lesbians in it. I have a rational, justified, normal dislike of Neil Druckmann. Because he makes games that don't have enough gameplay in them, these games then inexplicably become popular and thus influential, and then other developers start also making games with too much boring filler. If I didn't make my point clearly enough already, I'm going to make it again here, and I'm really going to beat this thing to death. A good writer can write a good woke story. A bad writer will write a bad woke story. A woke story can be good or bad. But whether or not the story is woke has to be about the subject matter. If I'm going to call a show or a game woke, it has to be actively trying to make some kind of statement that is woke. It can't just be about the demographics of the cast. Does the story directly talk about racism or sexism? Is the message or moral of the story specifically about those things? Or does it just have black people in it? Or gay people? Or stars a woman? Woke does not automatically equal bad. If you're going to call something woke, long before you could possibly know how the story plays itself out, just because it has certain undesirable demographics in it, then how are you being anything other than racist or sexist or whatever? If that's it, you have no point. You're pointless. You're pointless c***. Some of you pointless people might say that the story of a thing doesn't need to be woke for the thing itself to be woke. The inclusion of these undesirables is proof enough, because the writer would have to be woke to even think of including them in the first place. This is fucking bullshit. A writer doesn't need special permission from the universe to put a gay dude in some shit. The only necessary condition for putting these other kinds of people in any story is the fact that these people exist in reality. And to all the black anti-woke people out there, be careful who you make common cause with. You might not like gay people, trans people, or muscle-bound ugly women. You might have your own list of undesirables, but your partner's got a list too. And his list is just one longer. In other words, anti-woke people of color are helping to advocate for a world in which they themselves cannot exist. I'm not saying that everyone complaining about Yasuke is racist, but an extremely large percentage of them are. And for these people, it's not that they don't want black people in historical settings where they don't belong. It's that they don't want black people. Put black people in a real historical setting, they complain. Put black people in a fictional, magical historical setting, they complain. Put black people in a real modern-day setting, they complain. Put black people in a fictional, magical modern-day setting, they complain. Put black people in a story set in the future of a country that currently has black people, they complain. Black people get together and make their own stories, they complain. The funny thing is, a year or two from now, when the next black character is announced in a story where they don't belong, these people will say, this pushback isn't racist. No one complained about Yasuke or Sister Sage. But as we can see, these people are full of shit. Anyway, I don't say any of this to defend Ubisoft's business practices or the Assassin's Creed franchise, which, as an OG Assassin's Creed fan, I haven't been a fan of lately. Maybe I'll make a video explaining why. The short version is that this game is trash. And these games are just Witcher games. They're not even really Assassin's Creed games at all, at least not gameplay-wise. Before Mirage, I would have said that there hasn't been a real Assassin's Creed game since Unity. But there hasn't been a good Assassin's Creed game since Revelation. Will I be pre-ordering Assassin's Creed Shadows? Absolutely not. I made the mistake of pre-ordering Assassin's Creed Mirage. I believed Ubisoft when they said it was going to be a throwback to the style of the older games. It turned out to be a throwback in aesthetics only. I'll probably do the same thing with Shadows that I did with these two. Wait a couple of years until the complete editions go on sale. At some point after I wrote all this, Ubisoft decided to do me a favor and delay Assassin's Creed Shadows until after I could release this video. They know I like to take my time. Some people are saying that this spells doom for Ubisoft. You had that one guy saying that people need to get used to the idea of not owning their own games, the underperformance of Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown and Star Wars Outlaws, and of course, the idiotic reaction to Assassin's Creed Shadows. Some people even want Ubisoft to fail. And of course, most of those people are scum. I'll say this. About Lost Crown, it's a shame it didn't do better because it's actually a great game. I had a lot of fun with that game and I've played through it multiple times since it came out. Star Wars Outlaws is a game that should just never have been made. Who the fuck wants to play a Star Wars game as anything other than a Force user? I don't care if it's a Sith or a Jedi. Give me a fucking lightsaber and some Force powers. I don't want to play Uncharted in space. And as far as AC Shadows, maybe they did delay it because they're going under. But I think, regardless of the stupidity of the Yasuke haters, that game is going to sell. From everything I heard, the pre-order numbers were strong before they were canceled. Maybe they really did just want to polish the game to avoid another Unity situation. And now I see that they've delayed the game again. God damn, Ubisoft. I just want the game to be out. I want this to be over. Okay? This shit is tiresome. All the past 6 months of these anti-woke morons talking about go woke, go broke, and George Yasuke Floyd and all this shit. This shit is tiresome. The game will come out and it will either fail, in which case these people will spend the next year jerking themselves raw talking about how they told us so, or the game will succeed and they'll pretend that they never had a problem with it in the first place. Either way, I'm not going to buy it at launch. You know, I'll play the game eventually, but I'm not petty enough to buy the game at launch just to inflate the launch day sales numbers to try to fuck these people over. I am not them, you know?
You are all of you beneath me.
Anyway, whatever happens, I guess we'll find out come March.